The different forms of trauma. Presented by the Ward and Wellness Services. In association with CJ Ward Creations. Sex trafficking. The exchange of anything of value, money, shelter, food, clothing, drugs, etc., for a sex act with someone under the age of 18 is referred to as child sex trafficking. Children of various ages, races, and socioeconomic backgrounds are victims of sex trafficking, which occurs in urban, suburban, and rural settings, as well as land-based nations and other indigenous societies. Youngsters trafficked in the United States could be U.S. citizens or children brought in from other nations. The sections below contain information on child sex trafficking, including fundamental definitions, risk factors, impact, and screening, evaluation, and intervention strategies. Mental health experts, healthcare providers, school staff, policymakers, and others can all benefit from the information and tools provided. Child sex trafficking is a particularly serious kind of child sexual abuse that is prohibited in all 50 states. The recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or solicitation of a person under the age of 18 for the purposes of a commercial sex act, defined as any sex act for which anything of value is given to or received by any person, is defined as sex trafficking of minors, according to the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. It's just the exchange of anything valuable for sex with a child or minor. While proof of force, fraud, or coercion is required for adult sex trafficking victims, these components are not required for minors, nor is it necessary for a third party to benefit from or facilitate the trade. To put it another way, a victim of trafficking does not have to have a known trafficker. Another word for this is commercial sexual exploitation of children, CSEC. Child sex trafficking examples. A 14-year-old makes an internet friend and begins a connection with him. In order for him to pay his rent, the friend asks her to have sex with his pals. In exchange for drugs, a woman lets her drug dealer perform sex acts on her 6-year-old kid. A 15-year-old girl trades sex for free trips from a ride-hailing company. A 16-year-old transgender teen has sex with a doctor in exchange for hormones and money to pay for surgical treatments that will allow them to obtain a physical body that matches their gender identification. A tribe member recruits youngsters as young as 12 on a reservation to sell drugs and engage in sex acts with casino guests in exchange for cash, phones, and clothing. In exchange for the youngster masturbating live on camera, an 11-year-old boy receives a cell phone from someone he meets on his gaming system. A 15-year-old Guatemalan girl is transported to live with her uncle in the United States, where she is promised a better life. For money, her uncle forces her to perform sex acts with his business associates. A 13-year-old girl and her 14-year-old friend flee their group home. To offset the expense of their hotel room and food, the friend takes images of her and posts an ad for sexual services on an adult services website. Who is the most vulnerable person? Sex trafficking affects people of various socioeconomic classes, races, ethnicities, and gender identities in cities, suburbs, and rural areas across the United States, as well as land-based nations and other indigenous communities. However, because to a complex interplay of individual, relationship, community, and societal influences, some adolescents are at higher risk. Societal sexualization of children, gender-based violence, strict gender roles. Homophobia and transphobia, tolerance of others' marginalization, lack of awareness of child trafficking, lack of resources for exploited youth, social injustice, structural racism, and tolerance of community and relationship violence are some of the issues that need to be addressed. Community. Under-resourced schools and neighborhoods, community violence, community social norms, gang presence, commercial sex in the area, transient male populations in the area, poverty, and a lack of job opportunities are all issues. Relationship. Friends and family members participating in commercial sex, family dysfunction, intimate partner abuse, caregiver loss or separation, lack of understanding of child trafficking, poverty, and unemployment are all factors that can lead to child trafficking. Individual. Truancy, unmonitored and risky internet and social media use, behavioral or mental health difficulties, substance use, and unaccompanied migrant status. What is it like for young people who have been sexually trafficked? Youth who have been sex trafficked have frequently suffered a variety of traumas and challenges throughout their life. This encompasses both their pre-trafficking trauma and adversity, which often contributed to their susceptibility, as well as their trafficking experiences. Youth may confront numerous hurdles even after being identified as victims of human trafficking. Professionals should be aware of these experiences and their impact on children. Here is a list of common youth experiences before, during, and after being trafficked, which is not exhaustive. Prior to being trafficked: child sexual abuse, exposure to intimate partner and community violence, traumatic loss and separation from caregivers, child protective services involvement, foster care placement, juvenile justice involvement, multiple caregiver and placement transitions, and educational disruptions, homelessness, impaired caregiving, providing monetarily for family members, exposure to familial trafficking or peers involved in commercial sex trade, while being trafficked, sexual violence, multiple sexual contacts with different purchasers, sexual contact without contraception/barrier, unwanted pregnancies and STIs, witnessing the violence of others, community or gang-related violence, betrayal by caregivers and trusted others, neglect of medical and physical needs, substance use, forced or method of control, significant physical and emotional abuse by traffickers and purchasers, bullying by peers, separation from traditional supports of family and community, forced to inflict harm and or exploit others. After being trafficked: arrest and detention, placement transitions, threats, fear of harm by exploiters, efforts to re-exploit through commercial sex by traffickers and or peers, isolation and shame, difficulties integrating into typical educational and social settings, lack of access to resources, loss of community support, bias and discrimination by professionals and trusted others, medical conditions, difficulty accessing employment and other financial supports. Despite these challenges, young people are resilient and can cope with challenging situations in a variety of ways. It's crucial to remember that even if adolescents who are or have been trafficked have any of the following events, they may not consider them traumatic. Trafficking's effects: prior to, during, and even after being trafficked, children and adolescents often experience a wide range of trauma and adversities, resulting in sexual, physical, and emotional injuries, as well as sometimes severe long-term health, educational, economic, legal, social, relational, sexual, and spiritual consequences. Screening: youth screening ensures that those participating in child sex trafficking or at high risk of being trafficked are recognized, and it highlights the need for further assessment by specified systems, agencies, and specialists. For a variety of reasons, youth who have been trafficked and exploited may be hesitant to tell professionals about their experiences. Professionals may also be hesitant to question children about their encounters with human trafficking. Potential reasons youth may not disclose: shame, guilt, and self-blame are all feelings that people experience. Fear of retaliation from their trafficker if they speak out about their abuse. Their commitment to their trafficker, example, not going to snitch. Discrimination and fear of judgment. Fear of being detained because of outstanding warrants. Deportation concerns. They don't recognize or see their experiences as exploitative, and they don't seek assistance. Authority and the system are both viewed with suspicion. Potential reasons providers may not conduct screening: lack of awareness and education about human trafficking and exploitation, uncertainty about what questions to ask and how to respond to a potential revelation, fear and apprehension about discussing difficult topics, discrimination and bias towards persons who engage in commercial sex. Biases based on culture, examples, against LGBTQ+ people or foreign adolescents and families. Barriers to communication, example, provider speaks different language than potential victim, translation services not available or not accessed. In order to drive service planning and intervention, assessment entails gathering detailed information from the kids and their families in order to gain a holistic understanding of the youth. Assessing kid and family safety, human trafficking conditions, immigration problems, basic requirements, strengths and resources, and mental health are all examples of comprehensive assessments. Depending on the focal area and position of the expert providing the evaluation, certain elements and strategies may vary. It is critical to examine for safety and fundamental necessities, regardless of your role. Multiple professionals may be better positioned, depending on their roles, to gather knowledge in a specific subject if they collaborate. To help with identified service barriers, collaboration and referral to case managers are required. Failure to address these critical domains will limit a young person's access to additional resources and participation in intervention.